All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Aquarium of the Pacific's online academy. I apologize for the slight delay. We were having a couple technical difficulties. Wanted to make sure everything was working and streaming before I hopped in. Like I said, welcome back. Today we are doing a Ask a Scientist program. So this is fairly new for us, but the way this is going to work is we're going to have a phone number right down here on the bottom of the screen, and it's going to be 562 286 1838. Now, during this live stream, we invite you to text this number right here and ask us anything you wanted to know, anything you want to discover about the deep sea. We're going to do our best to work as a team here in the studio. My name is Dana. I have Jen controlling what's going on up here. I have Emily and James out at the side taking your questions, passing them into me. And also, we're all working together to get the answers because the beautiful thing about being a scientist is you can say, I don't know. And then we can learn together. So we're excited to have you joining us today. We're excited to kind of be put to the test to learn as much as we can about the deep sea together. Again, 562-286-1838. Go ahead and give us a text. Keep in mind that texting rates do apply, and make sure you have adult permission before you send us a message today. Now, if you are asking or watching after our live stream, you are more than welcome to continue to ask questions. Go ahead and email this address right down here. It's live@lbaop.org. Now, again, our program is going to be from 1 to 1:30. We'll go ahead and take those live questions and then go ahead and email us afterwards if there's just so much more that you want to learn about. So let's get started. What do we want to know about the deep sea? We're going to have Jen put some habitat images behind me, kind of spark the curiosity. I'll give a very general overview. But the beautiful thing about the deep ocean is there's going to be a lot of which I can say, I don't know. And that's because only a very small fraction of our ocean has actually been explored. In fact, we know more about the surface of the moon than we do about what's at the bottom of our oceans. And that's because it's a very deep habitat, and there are a lot of constraints when you're down there. There's high pressure, cold temperatures, and very dark. Right? So all three of those things make it difficult as explorers and as scientists to discover, right? There's a lot of things that we have, a lot of challenges that we have to face. But this is a beautiful image behind me. This is actually, it looks like what's the word I'm looking for? Like a ship, right? At the bottom of the sea. There's things growing on it. Wow, look at these like patterns right here. That's beautiful. That looks like some writing of some sort, right? And there's all sorts of things going on. But what I love about this image is I mentioned how dark it is, how deep it is, how much pressure there is, how cold it is. And yet, take a look at this. There are so many animals that have called that place home. And so today I want to talk about the habitat. I want to talk about the animals. Looks like we're getting some questions coming in. So this is exciting. I'm so ready to be stumped. So while we're waiting for those questions to come this direction, let's make some more observations. Maybe what are some things you see? Does anything on here surprise you? Like, were you expecting this much life? Now, Matthew wants to know, what is the most dangerous animal in the deep sea? That's a great question, Matthew. I'm going to start by saying that's a great question, Matthew, right? Because there's so many animals that we have yet to discover. However, some of the animals down there can be very large, right? We have the giant squid. We have the colossal squid. Sperm whales are a very large toothed predator that can dive down to the deep ocean. There's a handful of sharks down there. I want to say the sleeper shark is a really, really deep sea one, right? There's goblin sharks down there. If you've never heard of that, they have this really cool face. There's a lot of eels. There's a lot of invertebrates, animals that don't have a backbone. So as far as what the most dangerous one is, I don't know. That's a really great question. And it basically is kind of highlighting that there's still so much for us to discover and explore down there. Now, another question is, how do anglerfish make light and why? I love this. Now, correct me if I'm wrong before I answer this. Anglerfish is bioluminescence, correct? Okay. So anglerfish, right? I'm not sure if we have a photo of one, but a lot of us have seen the image in Finding Nemo of the anglerfish with the little glowing angler, right? That's where they get their name. It's like a little doodad coming off their forehead. And at the end of it is a glowing orb. Now, inside that little orb is two chemicals. You have luciferin and luciferase. And these chemicals react with each other to create light. It's called bioluminescence. Bio meaning life, and then lumen, right, being light. So it's created by the life and the chemical reaction that's going on inside of there. And so why do they have it? Well, again, they're in a really deep, dark ocean, and they're trying to find food. That's a big one, right? A lot of times things going on in the deep sea are are animals trying to find food, trying to find a mate, trying to escape becoming food, or maybe trying to stay warm or adapt to that environment, right? And so their little angler, their little light up orb, is their way of attracting food, right? We call them an anglerfish because an angler is someone who sits on the side and sits on a boat, has their line in the water, and so they're angling, right? They're fishing for fish, and so the anglerfish does the same thing. It kind of attracts them, right? Now, other animals, one of my favorite deep sea animals is a little shrimp that also has bioluminescence, but rather than attracting animals to it, they use it as a defense mechanism. They have like a delayed reaction where they can go and spit out this little bit of bioluminescent light that's delayed, and the shrimp goes as far away as it can, and then that little light packet lights up, and the predator that was chasing the shrimp will go for that. So you can see very similar adaptation used for very different behaviors. Julian wants to know, what do vampire squid like to eat? I love that. And it's actually going to bring us into such a great topic. Vampire squid, Julian, they like to eat marine snow and detritus. So detritus is like dead things, right? Dead things that, in this case, have fallen to the seafloor. And marine snow is the detritus that is falling. Okay, so marine snow is all of the things that are up on the surface that die and drift down. And so it looks like if you were down there, it looks like it's snowing, right? And so they'll feed on that stuff. They'll feed on detritus and anything else that falls to the seafloor. So that's a great question. And marine snow is so cool. And it also talks about the transfer of nutrients, right? Oh, sure. So, up at the surface, there's light. There's a lot of animals. That's called the photic zone. And so there's a lot of nutrients going kind of on in this upper layer here. The photosynthesis happens at the producer level. Little organisms eat the little phytoplankton, so on and so forth, up the food chain to these large predators. Well, eventually all of those animals on the surface are going to die and they sink. And that brings nutrients from this really nutrient rich upper layer down to the deep sea floor, and it provides nutrients to a habitat that might be lacking in some other areas. Now, Jen is going to bring up a photo, I believe, of a sea cucumber. Okay. And this is another animal that feeds on detritus. So this is a pelagic sea cucumber. And actually, all this stuff kind of drifting around it, this is like marine snow. It's the stuff that's kind of drifting in the ocean and sinking down. And so this is very confusing. Like, what do you mean? That's not a sea cucumber, right? But if you look right here, this is great. Actually, Jen, if you could pause it right there. So we're going to look at this and then we'll put an image of what we usually think of as a sea cucumber on the screen. But sea cucumbers usually have these kind of oral tentacles or oral arms that come out to feed. And that's what this clump right here in the middle actually is. And so you can kind of see that. Now let's go ahead and put up a photo of a normal sea cucumber. See what we've got. So that weird drifting thing that we were just looking at is related to this other sea cucumber. And at first glance, you're like, I don't see the resemblance, right? But in a moment, I'll kind of point out where those oral arms might be so that you can see how these animals might be actually similar. But deep sea or pelagic, which is kind of the open ocean animals, can be very different from their coastal or shallow counterparts. Now, we do have a couple questions coming in. And so we'll get to those in just a moment. So here's a cucumber, right? This thing and that drifting clear thing are the same kind of animal. But on this kind, this is more of a coastal shallow one, their oral arms kind of come out right here. And they feed, they take in sand and they take the detritus off the sand and then they poop out clean sand, which is really cool. And again, the same thing for that drifter that we were just looking at. It takes in the marine snow and the detritus and it eats as much as it can, and then it probably releases some afterwards. Now, Michaela and Riley want to know, how deep is the deep sea? Oh my goodness. Okay, so take Mount Everest, okay, cut it off at its base, flip it upside down, and you're still not at the bottom of the ocean. So the deepest point in the ocean is known as Challenger Deep, and it is over 10,000 meters, not feet, meters. So you can multiply that by 3. It's somewhere like an average number is around 36,000 feet, which is really crazy. Now, Nora wants to know what is the oh, I love this. What is the cutest animal in the deep sea? Do we have any opinions on this? The Dumbo octopus. I knew somebody would have a very strong opinion about that. The Dumbo octopus. They're an octopus that looks like they have big ears on the side, and they like kind of swim with those. They're like little finlets actually, and I love them, and they're adorable. Sage wants to know, how do deep sea fish survive in the deep? And then another question was, how do fish breathe? So let's start with the fish breathing one, because that kind of helps as far as the deep sea survival aspect. So I get very excited about the deep sea. I'm talking incredibly fast, but I had to pause and take a big breath because I have lungs that pull oxygen from the air around me. Fish do not have lungs. Instead, they have gills. They usually have a gill covering right on the side of their head that protects their kind of feathery gill filaments. And the gills are a structure that pulls oxygen from the water. So our lungs don't work very well when they're in water, and gills don't work too well when they're out of water, right? So it's just similar functions, very different structures, and in different mediums. So with that being said, fish in the deep sea also breathe using lungs. And they have to find other ways to adapt. So let's think about the deep sea habitat here for a moment. Jen, if we could actually just get kind of a general deep sea abyss-ish place on the screen, that would be great. And I want you all to make some observations. What do you notice? What's something that stands out to you? And if you were an animal living in this challenging environment, what would you do to help yourself survive? Okay. So we're going to pull up, looks like we have so many like really unique footage about this place. So we're going to kind of explore what options we have before we put it on the screen here. But in order to survive, what do you need? You need food. You need to reproduce, right? Animals are trying to reproduce. You need to avoid becoming food. And you need to, kind of those are the big ones, right? So, and then of course you have to survive in the habitat, right? So a fish doesn't really survive on land, even though, you know, we have food and everything. So, okay, so here's like a deep sea habitat. How would you survive in this if you were a fish? Would you be, let's see, we're under a lot of water. We're under a lot of pressure, right? It's very dark. It's really cold. What do you think? Well, you might be feeding on crabs, right? You might take advantage of the food that's down there. These things right here, these are types of worms. A lot of this is a type of deep sea coral. And so you're cold, you're under a lot of pressure, right? It's dark, you can't really see. Wow, it is super challenging down there. So, like I said, one thing they do is they eat what is down there. They're not going to be looking after, you know, animals that live on the surface or anything like that. For the pressure, well, some animals in the deep sea can be really small. In fact, anglerfish we think of as being like pretty big, right? Because we're so used to that scene where there's a clownfish and an anglerfish, and they're dealing with that, and they're pretty comparable in size. The angler is much bigger. Well, in reality, some anglerfish are only like that big. Teeny tiny, right? And that's because the smaller body you have, the less pressure is on it. Okay. Now you can think of it like this. Everybody give me, hold up a quarter, an invisible quarter. All right. We all know roughly the size of a quarter, and place that on top of your head. Okay. We all have, Jen's doing it too. Perfect. So we have an invisible quarter on top of our head. Now take another quarter, place it next to it, and another one next to it, another one next to it. Cover your entire body in quarters. For every quarter that's on you, you have the weight of like, I think it's 4 school buses or something ridiculous like that. Super heavy, okay? And so that's what it's going to feel like in the deep sea. And so your body has to be able to adapt to that. And that's why a lot of animals down there can be quite tiny. The smaller you are, the less quarters on your body, right? What else? It's dark. How do animals see in the dark? Do any animals on land have to see in the dark? Yeah, some of them do. right? Nocturnal animals, any animals that come out at night, usually are adapted to see in the in the dark environment. And so, how do they do that? Think of nocturnal animals. Do they have tiny little eyes? No. A lot of nocturnal animals have really big eyes, or no eyes at all. They've learned to sense their environment without vision, right? So, they, like bats, for example, right? They use kind of an echolocation. It's like a little sonar. Ooh, this one's cool. What is that? That is a deep sea amphipod. Isopod. Sorry, this is a deep sea isopod. God, Jen, feed me the wrong information. A deep of this one. So this is another animal that lives down there, and as you can see, it's kind of weird looking, right? It actually reminds me of a roly-poly, okay, which is a little pill bug that we have here on land. This is a smaller version of that. All right, I'm actually going to go put it on our document camera over here. All right, so this, I mean, it's in a case, of course, but this is the little isopod over here. Now, this is an animal that we have them all over the ocean. They're very prominent in kelp forests, but they're much smaller. And so this is one weirdo that is actually significantly larger in the deep sea. This is a fairly small one, but that big one that we saw over there, that giant isopod, let's see, it could be like a foot long, right? For one of those. Ugh, I don't know. There's a lot of little legs down there, right? So animals can survive in the deep sea in a number of different ways. I think we got those taken care of. Cool. All right, so we're going to go put up some other footage of the deep sea habitat and see what that looks like and see if we can make and share any other observations. We're getting a phone call. Hello? We're going to see if we can cancel this part. There we go. All right.
Oh, good.
Technology, am I right? All right, so there we go. Look at this beautiful deep sea habitat. That was just a distraction. We're keeping y'all on your toes. All right, so what is this? This doesn't seem like it belongs in the ocean. Well, this, my friends, is actually one way that we can do research in the deep sea, right? So this is some form of a marker, marking different organisms or different areas that they might be exploring. Deep sea exploration can be very challenging because just like those animals have to deal with and adapt to that weird high pressure, cold temperature, all that kind of stuff environment, well, explorers have to do the same thing. So oftentimes we'll send down what's called an ROV, or a remote operated vehicle, and it drops down to depths. It's like a little robot. In fact, I love this. If you are really big video gamers and you love to control stuff like that, and it's all like, excuse me, remotely operated or anything like that, if you like driving around little like remote control cars, you could be a deep sea scientist. And that's because we drop these big ROVs, remotely operated vehicles, down there to explore. All right, here's one. So this is the Sebastian, which is Sebastian is Falcor. Here we go. Perfect. This is our Lego sub. This is our Lego ROV. I'm going to bring it real close to you for a second. There you go. And so this is an example of what we might drop down to the deep sea. And actually, except for they're big. They're very big. Can we get the deep sea back on there? We're going to do a little like imitated exploration here. So our little ROV, which is not so little, is going to go down into the deep ocean, and they're going to explore all around. Okay. And they're going to use arms, and they're going to use grabbers and pinchers. Here we go. And so they're going to do all of this research controlled by someone up above, using the same kind of mechanics that you might use if you're playing video games, or if you're doing a remote control car, or if you're doing anything like that. So if that's something that you find yourself really interested in, take a look into this science a little bit more and see if there's ways that you can become a deep sea explorer. And now, What's also great about the deep sea is every time we go down there, remember in the beginning of the program, I said that a very, very small part of our oceans have been explored. I think like 95% of the ocean is still left to be discovered. And so every time you do a deep sea excursion, there are very good odds that you're seeing something entirely new. A place that's never been seen before, an animal that might not have ever been seen before, and you never really know what you're going to come across. In fact, we have some really great maps of the deep sea floor. So we're going to give Jen the opportunity to pull up those maps here in a moment. She's going to have to switch over. And one thing that we do is we get a map image, and then we can kind of explore the details of that map using the ROV. And so the map image is oftentimes a sonar image, all right, and it's colored. The shallower it is, it's going to be like lighter colors, so reds and yellows. And then as you work your way down, it's typically going to be deeper blues and purples. And so we're going to get a great image of this. It's in the NOAA folder, I believe. So she'll pull that up and we'll take a look at that. And then, like I said, we'll get that sonar image. We'll understand what the seafloor looks like. But just because we know what the map looks like doesn't mean we actually know what it's like down there. So that's where the actual sub and ROV exploration come into play. Ooh, it looks like we're getting a couple more animals. Or animals. Getting a couple more questions. Okay, so here's a great map. Like I said, the red and lighter colors, bright colors are going to be the shallower part. And then you can see this is kind of like an island, right? So it comes up shallow here, right here, and then it drops off into this really deep. And this purple stuff, that's called the abyss. All right. So there's different zones in the ocean. And when we're talking about the deep, deep sea, we're usually talking about the like the abyssal zone or anything else. So what animals eat anglerfish? Great question. I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to think about that. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking is anything that can catch it. So a lot of animals in the deep ocean are opportunistic hunters in the sense that they're not going to come across other organisms often. So when they do, they're going to take advantage of that opportunity. So anything that can catch it. Now, how old do you have to be to drive an ROV? Good question. I would imagine you're going to have a career in that or a job or a volunteer position. And so adults, 18 and older usually, but okay. Perfect. So you can also start a lot of programs in different high schools have opportunities to learn all about them, even younger. In fact, there is some open source, which means available for anyone to explore directions on how to build your own ROV. So you can start getting practice right here, right now, if that's something that you're interested in. In fact, I've driven one before. It was a very small one, but my friend built it using that online resource that told him how, and then we practiced driving around the pool, right? Which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's kind of cool. And then we were able to take it out into a very shallow, calm part of the ocean and just do a little bit of exploration. So if you were to drive one on a big research vessel, something like this, that would be a huge opportunity. But here's a great picture. But you can drive an ROV right now if you want to look up that information. So like I said, if you're interested in exploring the deep ocean or, like I said, controlling ROVs or anything like that, definitely check out some other resources. Let's see. So this is a picture right here. What's this? What do you see right there? Yeah, that's an anchor. So this is another incidence of a shipwreck on the seafloor. This is an ROV right here. And then it's going and exploring. You can see the light coming off of it. Now, some other things that ROVs are able to do is they're able to take samples. They're able to collect like specimens. So one of those mechanical movements they have are usually like arms of some sort that can take things, and they have little containers that they can do. So the deep sea is such an open and amazing place to explore still. Again, there's a lot that we don't know. I'm going to have Jen throw some images up as we go through and just scroll through some photos and some examples of animals that we might find down there, some examples of habitats that we might find down there. There's going to be a lot to check out. Oh, I love this. This is the big eye. Bobtail. This is a bobtail squid right here. So a squid is a type of cephalopod, which are related to octopus and cuttlefish, anything like that. Also, it's in a larger group called mollusk, all of our soft-bodied invertebrates. And so being a soft body is another way that a lot of animals can adapt to a high-pressure environment. It allows them to be very flexible and kind of get smushed a little bit more under that pressure. There's not a whole lot of hard things that could crack or enclose spaces. What would happen if we went to the deep sea? Just you and I, just like we are right now. Ooh, our lungs could actually collapse because there's so much pressure on them, right? Which is kind of crazy. Any airspace could theoretically collapse. And so they manage that by not having those air spaces. Big eyes. Remember we talked about nocturnal animals who are seeing in the dark usually have really big eyes. It's a really great one. Ooh, yay, questions. Julian wants to know, do we find dinosaur fossils in the deep sea? I'm sure there's some down there, right? But we don't actually dig around and explore for them. So there's so many things that are extant, which means still around. So extinct means they're gone. Extant means they're still here. That we're still discovering a lot of things that still do currently exist. And then James wants to know, what do anglerfish eat? Anglerfish feed on, again, anything they can catch, right? So they're going to use that that bioluminescent angler to, oh, here we go. Check that out. All sorts of critters. So that's an example of, I believe, an anglerfish, and that's a flashlight fish. That's another one. These little things right here, that's a little bioluminescent packet that also helps it glow and helps it see. A lot of them have, deep sea creatures are so cool looking, right? So, but again, it's going to come down to anything they can catch. Sort of the same thing as what eats an anglerfish, anything that can catch it, right? So my friends, you are asking really great questions. We are going to be wrapping it up here. It looks like we have a couple more coming in that I'll go ahead and answer. And then if you're still watching or you're watching after the fact of the live stream, go ahead and shoot us an email at live@lbaop.org, and we're going to do our best to answer it. Otherwise, thanks for joining. Like I said, Emily's furiously writing over here. I love it. We've got Bella wants to know, do big eye creatures have better vision than humans? So that's a great question, Bella. Not necessarily. Eye size doesn't always relate to how good your vision is, right? So it also can come down to clarity of the environment that you're living in. In fact, sometimes bigger eyes don't see all that well, and so they are so big to take in as much of that image as possible. So it doesn't necessarily mean they see better or worse. It depends on the animal. And then Alex wants to know, do ROVs collect trash at the bottom of the ocean? Really great question, Alex. No, they do not. So they're down there in, they do come across it. Actually, one of my favorite footage that we've come across on one of our deep sea, we used to stream a deep sea exploration. They came across a radio, like a walkie-talkie at the bottom of the sea. So something that clearly fell off of a ship. And so there is trash down there, but ROVs are not down there collecting that trash. So that was a great question, though, and kind of a good thought of like what else might be down there. Is it all, left pristine and untouched? So great question, everyone. Again, thank you for joining us. Go ahead and email us if there's anything else that you want to discover about the deep sea. Otherwise, we'll be back here at 2 o'clock talking about, what are we talking about at 2 o'clock? Plankton, jellies and plankton, which Jen has been talking about already all day. So she's really excited to teach this program. Make sure you stick around and think of any questions that you want to discover and know a little bit more about for plankton and jellies. And we'll see you back at 2 o'clock.